Hello, how are you from wherever you are? I'm saying hi and I hope that you're being fine. I am fantastic from my end, and today I want to welcome you to a very interesting conversation, matters suicide, and we'll be talking about the causes or the factors that contribute to someone having or committing suicide. And I hope this discussion will give you some tips and good information that will help you as a person and will also equip you to be helpful to your community, your society, your institution, your family, name it. So welcome, and just going straight up to the first factor. It could be one, genetic reasons to why someone would commit suicide, and this is when there's some occurrences of suicidal activities that happen in that particular family over generation from generation. And it's a lot of time people say that you cannot avoid it, but I'll be bringing in a psychologist in the next video to just explain how this works and how we can be able to avoid it and how we can be able to just prevent it from happening. The second factor would be life history. We have a lot of things that happen in our lives, and some of these things, they're not good memories that we'd love to remember. Some of these memories, they are very painful and they bring traumas in our lives, and from that, people could sometimes feel hopeless, or you start hating yourself because of what happened in your past, and then that would lead you to depression, and from depression some people succumb to committing suicide. So again, it could be your past, and it's very advisable for you as a person or any friend or your family member, if you notice that they are undergoing traumas or pain or blaming themselves of things that happened in the past, it's very advisable for you to just go for a talk therapy and see a psychologist who will help you heal your wounds in the proper way and regain your dignity and regain your self-esteem. So the third factor is mental health. Mental health is a very broad topic, and today I'll just state some of the categories that if you find yourself in, then it can lead you to committing suicide, and it's very important that you seek help. And one of it is severe depression. If you undergo severe depression, most people, this is a state where you're hopeless, and most people, once they feel hopeless, they don't find meaning in life and they end up committing suicide. Another thing would be schizophrenia. This is where you have delusions, you have hallucinations, and these hallucinations can lead you to committing suicide. Bipolar disorder, it's another category where you have very high emotions, you're very excited, and in a minute you're very low, and you end up into depression. And at times bipolar people can commit suicide because they get very low emotional influence in their life, and sometimes they cannot be able to control it. Another category is borderline personality disorder, where you're not able to stabilize your emotions. You have disturbed thinking patterns and impulsive behavior, that if something happens to you, you're not able to control your behavior, or you're not able to control your thinking. So if you have suicidal thoughts, they'll keep haunting you over and over, and you'll end up committing suicide. And another thing will be anorexia nervosa, where these are people who are really keen with their weight, and they would rather not eat or take water or green tea. I'm not saying it's bad, but once it's done too much, then it can hurt you as a person. It tempers with your system, and you might end up committing suicide, because again, your system is not very well functioning, and that would lead you to maybe depression or emotional disorders, some things like this, and you can end up committing suicide. This is another factor that we'll be able to know more about it once we have the psychologist coming on board. And then another factor will be sexual abuse. If you've been abused sexually, if there's parental neglection, if you're having a parent with mental illness, this is a factor. Actually, I was just thinking about it, and then I was wondering, why would you commit suicide because your parent has mental illness? So this is another factor that we'll be talking about in the next video with a psychologist, and we'll just get to know why and what psychologically what triggers you to commit suicide, because someone in your family attempted suicide or committed suicide or has mental illness. And being isolated, lack of job, lack of home, or being on debt, and you feel like really cannot pay this debt, so it's better I die, because if I die, no one gonna ask for money from me, I am dead, you know. And sometimes people released from prison, they can commit suicide because they undergo a lot of things when they're in the prison. And some of these things, they're not very good memories, and once they get into the real life, reality hits them, they can't take everything at once, and they get into stress, and that leads them to depression. And sometimes they struggle with self denial and emotional imbalances and disorders, and they might end up committing suicide. And then the other thing would be traumas. And also we could have there's another factor, generalized anxiety disorder, whereby there's recurring feelings of you're very happy and you're very anxious, and this would lead someone to having, high levels of stress and high levels of anxiety that could lead to panic attacks, and from that, the emotional disorder will lead you to committing suicide. So from all those causes, I also discovered that when you're taking medicines or when you're under medication, it's very important for someone under the age of 25 years to know that antidepressants, they can lead to suicide, because sometimes young people take these antidepressants and they begin having suicidal thoughts. And once you don't tell your doctor, or you don't tell a family member, just to get concerned and give you the right path to follow or change your medication, you end up having more suicidal thoughts, and then you commit suicide. So it's very important, once you're given antidepressants and they're working against you and you're starting to have suicidal thoughts, it's very important you tell your doctor so that they can change your medication. And you can also be given psychological session where you can see a psychologist and you can just work things out with a psychologist. So from my research, I was interested with 3 factors that were done by an American psychologist called Charles Joyner. And he said the 3 factors: one is perception, where you feel like no one no one needs you, you're alone in this world, and you feel like, well, no one cares about me, no one loves me, and I am so alone, it's better I die. So some people commit suicide because of the perception of loneliness. And I want you to understand that loneliness it's not just you feeling alone or being isolated. We have 10 types of loneliness, something that I'll be talking about in the future. So just keep the tabs up and you'll be able to catch up with the conversation once I start it. And the second factor was a feeling that someone would do better if you're dead, or people would be better if you're dead. And these two, the first perception of loneliness and a feeling of people do better without you, they're not true. These are just kind of excuses for someone to commit suicide, because again, they cannot see hope, and again, they hate themselves, they hate the people that they are, and they can't really find meaning in life. And then the third factor is fearlessness towards death and pain. And funny enough, this is very interesting because it affects occupational spaces, and the most prone people to commit suicide from this angle, they're doctors and soldiers and nurses, because these people face death each and every day when they're treating people, or soldiers when they're at war. So they have the physical courage, and they're not scared of pain or death. So at times when they can't really handle things, or when they have traumas, they can just decide to kill themselves, that is, commit suicide, because again, remember, they do not have fear of pain and death. So these are some of the causes that I could find. I hope that I've been helpful, and if you want to read more about this, you can just go to this website, www.nhs.uk, and you'll be able to get more causes of suicide. And if you have any of these things that I've mentioned, it's very important. No matter how small it is, no matter how stupid it looks, just go and see a psychologist and help yourself out, because it might lead you to a path that you really would not want to go to. So it's very important that you seek help, and I encourage you to join in this conversation. Next time I'll be having a psychologist to explain deeper the psychological factors that would lead someone to having suicide, and some of these factors that I could not bring out clearly, and so that we could have a deeper understanding of what are these things that we should be looking at in our lives. And once we realize that we have them in our lives, we will, be able to seek for help. So thank you very much for joining in today, and God bless you. If you've not subscribed and you're new here, welcome. Subscribe for more videos, and I'm hoping to see you. For any contribution, any comments, just put them in the comment box and let's have this conversation. May God bless you and see you next time. Bye.